Alright, for this assignment, we're going to be taking this still here, or this one here, or that one there, or even this one here. And what we want to do is, what if we wanted to incorporate a CG element inside here? What if we want to make a, just as an object, just a sphere, and put a sphere in the middle of this room? Dropping it in here as a regular sphere, yeah, it could, kind of pass off as it. Maybe we add some lighting that kind of match the scene. It might work better. But what about shadows that are in here? What about reflections? What about all the stuff that goes into making an object actually appear to be inside the room? Okay, so that's what this task is going to take us into. All right, so we have this image here. You see it's kind of yellowy. By default, it's coming in at this as shot white balance. If I do an auto, you can see how we get this to look more white. If I do fluorescent, or if I do tungsten, I can change the coloring of each one of those, depending on what I did. Okay, so for this one, you're getting, this, which is a folder full of NEF files, which are raw images from a Nikon camera. There's also a couple movies in here, and these movies are 1920 by 1080, so they're going to be pretty big. Let's use that by half. And although we're not quite ready to do this part yet, bringing in a tracked camera, this method works with a tracked camera too. So once we get to that part, you could also use your setup for one of those guys. Okay. So what we need to do is first, I've just opened up Bridge. Open up the images in Photoshop, and they all come in just like they are. Here's the yellowy one, here's the white one. Obviously, I want to go with the whiter one and not this yellowy one. Okay, so I'm going to do some processing on all of these to get them to line up correctly, or to be colored correctly. So I'm just going to grab all of them and change their white balance to auto. And then I'm just going to verify, that I'm not doing anything crazy. It looks like everything's good. All right, now these top ones that are up here, these ones that look like they're very distorted, you can see how much lens distortion there is there. These are all fisheye images, and they're essentially they're going to create an environment that we could then put together. Okay, so I'm going to open up all these images in Photoshop. Let's try that again. It didn't open up all of them. I may have just had one clicked when I wanted all of them clicked. There we go. So they already have the white balance auto. Yes, I did. I want select all. There we go. And then open images. And I'm just going to save these as just TIFFs. Alright, so now that they've all opened, this is most likely going to take up a whole lot of memory. Just because these files are huge, so if I open up my task manager here just for fun, you'll probably see that Photoshop has 7 billion gigabytes of space being used. Alright, so I'm just going to save these images I'm going to save them as a TIFF. And I'm going to save them in what they are. Okay, so this is just a background plate. So I'm just going to make a new folder. BG plate. I'll just save that into here. Hit OK. And then close. Now I'll save this one into that same area. Same area. Still a background plate. This is a dud background plate, so I'm just going to close it. It's too bright. No, don't save changes. This one's good. There we go. This one's too dark, so let's close that. This one here, if you look at this image, look at this image, and that image. You can see that there's a brightness happening here. Okay, so here we're dark, we're medium, and we're bright. Okay, so what this is it's a gauging or a exposure value. So here we're kind of capturing all the bright spots. If there were any like high bright spots, we'd be able to see those really good. Here we're kind of capturing the middle tones, and then here we're capturing the shadows. So anything that's really dark, we'd be capturing. So these areas that are way over here in this dark area, we can see those a lot clearer in this image. You know, not that we need to see that dirt, but if I'm in here, you know, I get nothing. There's barely any data there at all. Okay, so I want to save those into separate folders. Okay, yeah, I think I might be missing one. I am. So, right. Come on. No, I'm not. Okay, it was just off to the side. All right, so I'm going to save this one. So go to Save As. And this one's going to be my Bright. So I'm going to make a new folder called Bright. And save that in here. Okay. I'm not renaming it. I'm just leaving it as the same name, just calling it Bright. So I'm going to close the Bright one. Then I'm going to find the next Bright one, which should be, you know, 2 down. Save this one into that same Bright folder. And then close it. And then go 2 down, or 3 down. And save this one into that Bright folder. I think my numbering might have got messed up on these pictures. Okay, so 1428, I'm going to save in the Bright folder. This is garbage. This one, even though it's bright, I don't need it, so I'm just going to close it. All these extra ones I'll remove before I give them to you. There's 27. 28 is a bright one, so save that in the Bright folder, which I already did. Just didn't close it, that's why. 29. 30. I just got confused because I didn't close the file. Close 31. 34 we'll save in there. Six. 37 is a bright one. 40 is a bright one. I'm just going to go through this whole thing, just separating all the bright ones from the dark ones. Alright, I believe I have all the bright ones done, so now I'm just going to make, this one's my dark, and this one's my medium. So I'm just going to save as, go to a medium folder, call it mid, and just save these into the mid folder. Oops, there's the bright one I forgot. So let's go into the bright folder. No, and I did. I just forgot to close it. Oh, here's another mid. There's another mid. There's a mid. So again, I'm just going to go through, save the mids, and then I'll save all the dark. Okay, so now I'm done. So if I look into my mid folder, and I look at my details, thinking. I have 16 images in here. Still thinking. And I'm just checking something here. Okay. All right, so it has 16 images in here, and these are all my dark ones. So if I go to my, sorry, that was my mid. If I go to my bright, I have 16 images. If I go to my dark, I have 16 images. So all three folders have 16 images in them because we have all the same number of images for each one. Okay. So the rest of those I can just ignore for now. And then of course in my other one, my BG plate, I have my 5 images that are in here. I think I was going to use this one maybe. And I'm just checking to make sure that all my information has followed over, and it has, so that's all good. Last time I did this, it didn't save it from Photoshop, so I'm just verifying. Okay, so now what we need to do is put these together. Now you don't have the program to put all these images together into an HDR, so I'm going to provide the HDR, but I want you, at least to do the parts you can do. So every step of the way, I'm going to have files for you that you can then go on and work with. Okay. So the program that we have, it's thinking, is under 3D, I believe. Let me go into Photoshop and just purge my memory or anything else that might have been there. I'm just checking my resources because it's going dog slow. There we go. We're going a bit quicker now. All right, so the application I'm going to use, there it is, Color Auto Pana Giga. Yeah, let me close Photoshop down because it's just going to take up space that I'm going to need at some point. All right, so now I'm back in Auto Pana Giga. You can download, I've downloaded a trial of PTGUI because I was playing with that too. You can download trials of Auto Pana Giga if you just wanted to play around with it and see. So what I'm going to do is say select images. And I'm going to go find in my folder here, print room. I'm going to go into my bright images and just grab all these and say open. So I'm grabbing all the bright images. And what I'm going to do is that's essentially a 360 panoramic, and I'm going to put that together so that I can create an HDR of it. So here's all those images. So let me go and select another images folder. I'll do the same thing with the dark. And we'll see that it pops it into a new collection. So we have 16 images here. We'll have 16 images down there. I'll import one more, which is select images from the mid. There we go. Okay. Now because the lens doesn't broadcast back what the data is, I have to go into my image properties. So I have to hit Control A or select them all. Oops. and then go to image properties. And then I need to tell it that this is a fisheye lens and that the focal length was 8.4. And this is my camera, the Nikon D7000. And this is what it converts it to. Okay, so I just hit OK. Then it finds out information. I do the same thing for this one. Image properties. I wish I would just save the info or give me like some presets, but alas, it does not. There we go. Then we'll come down to the last one. Image properties. 0.4, fisheye, okie dokie. Alright. So now that I've given it properties, then I can say detect. Okay, and then what this is going to do is it's going to go detect the information inside each one of these images, and then try to put this together into a panoramic image. So this will be number 1, this will be number 2, and so on. Okay, so there is the first one. And then that looks pretty good. There's some ghosting happening here, it looks like. Same thing there. I'm not too worried about that because we're going to take that out. And then this bottom one is working. And then the bottom one is done. So I have the bright, the dark, and the mid. So now what I'm going to do is just go to render panorama. And typically these panoramics are twice as wide as they are tall. All right, so you can see here 11654 is probably the double of that. So let me go through and try to find a good resolution here. For what we're doing, 4096 should be plenty. There we go. Okay, so 4096 by 2048. Ghost. How do I want to save this? I'm going to save it as an EXR. Okay. Or I'm sorry, not EXR. I'm going to save it as a TIFF out of here. And no compression is good. Panorama, good. And then I'm pretty sure, there it is, render. So now that's rendering, or going to be rendering. I'm going to do the same thing here. 4096. Set this to a TIFF with no compression. It's going to save it to my desktop, which is fine. Render that. Go down to this one. Set up the same thing. If this was for a movie, we definitely want to go with a higher res. But because we want this to work somewhat quick, we're going to go with the lower res. Compression here. Render. Okay, so the first one's done. Now it's going to work on the second one, obviously, and then it'll work on the third one. So once it's done, we'll... Alright, so my panoramics are done. I'm going to go into Photoshop, and I'm going to go to Open, just so you can see what one of these looks like. It's on my desktop. It ended up being... Yeah, details. So let me open up all three of these just so you can see what they look like. There we go. And you'll see that this obviously doesn't really match up. The carpet here is being cut off by this. We also have this really, you know, that's my tripod that I took the pictures with. It's in the way. Okay, eventually we're going to airbrush that out. But right now it would be very difficult to airbrush it out and make it look nice. Okay, here it is there still, and here it is there. So now we need to combine all three of these images into one image. So I'm going to go to File, Automate, Merge to HDR Pro, and I'm going to say Browse, and I'm going to find those files. So here they are on my desktop. Hit OK, and hit OK. So now it's going to go through, open up all three images, line them up correctly, and then merge them into one image. That will be an HDR image that we can then bring into Maya for lighting. Alright, so now this is set to 16. I'm going to set it to 32. That's what I want it to be, to retain all of that color information. And you'll see that I could pull this up really, really bright. And in these dark, dark areas here, I can get some of that data that I couldn't get before. And I could do the same thing here, pull this, I can't go too far that way, but I can go further the other way and see some of these lights that are up inside here too. Okay, so this part really doesn't matter because we can adjust it later inside the 3D app. So I'm just going to hit OK, which you can't see on the screen, but it's there. And there it is. All right. Now again, I can't just airbrush this out. If I tried to, if I tried to use my clone stamp and do this, you can see that it's going to go on this weird funky angle. All right. So we'll correct that later. Everything else looks good. Here's my, if I right click down or click on this little arrow, I get the 32-bit exposure, which is essentially what we were looking at before. Okay. So I'm just going to save this as. And I like to save it as an HDR. You could also save it as an OpenEXR. The goal is a 32-bit image. An HDR and an OpenEXR can save as a 32-bit image. So this is going to be VG environment. Okay. So I can close Photoshop, close this, close that, close this, no to all, I don't need to save anything. And then we're going to go into Nuke. Okay. Now this might seem a little bit confusing, but you'll see the reasoning for it. So I'm going to read in that HDR. And actually let me go through and just kind of clean my files up because, as I use several programs, they end up in several different spots. So let me just make a new folder that I can start organizing my stuff in inside here. So this is going to be the print room StillMatch. Okay. So 3D assets, VG plates. Okay, so my background environment, my images that I have here, and then also the print room. These BG plates here I want to put in there as well. I'm just going to copy them. There we go. Okay, we're starting to build up a nice file system setup. Also, we're starting to build up our files at 350 megabytes so far here, and then in this other folder that I just had up, all the files that we have there are 3.5 gigs, so it's a lot of space. So that's good there, and there, and there. Good. Okay, so let me just copy this into my 2560 folder. There we go. All right, so I'm going to go into Nuke, and we're going to read in print room, background plates. We're going to read in that HDR, and then view it. Okay, so here's the HDR. Now, just to kind of test it out, if I just make a sphere, a regular 3D sphere, and drop it on there, you'll see that I can go inside here and I can look around, and it's basically the environment that we were looking at before. Okay, I can even look straight down and hey, there's that tripod that I used. And you'll see that it gets cut off just because that's what, that data wasn't there. All right, so what we need to do is we need to basically unwrap this and put it onto a different kind of projection so that we can then go and clean it up. So I'm going to delete that sphere. And what I'm going to do is there's a distortion node, I believe it's under this one, and it's called spherical transform. Okay, and so what it does is it allows us to take stuff. Right now it's set to inputting a mirror ball and then outputting a lat long map. Well, we already had a lat long map, so that's what we're inputting. And then we're outputting, let's just to see, here's a mirror ball, what that would look like. Here's a cube, what that would look like. Here's an angular map, what that would look like. Okay, so you can come and play with these if you would like to. So we're going to do cube, that's the one we want. And you'll see the cube gives us basically like a flattened out version of what that would look like from the side. Okay, so that's what we want to do, is do this for each side. So right now we're doing this in the positive z direction. If I zoom in, you see, sorry, the negative z direction. This is what this little z is showing. So what I need to do is copy this and paste it for each one of these things. So I know I'm going to have 6 of these things because there's 6 sides to a cube. There we go. And just to keep things nice and organized, we use our little dots in here. Oops, that didn't work. Okay, because you'll see this is going to get a little bit messy. There we go. Okay, good. All right, so now we have all of these, and right now they're all the same. So what I want to do is this first one is good. That's what we're looking at. The second one, I want to look at this right side. So I'm going to go into my rotate Y and just put in 90. Okay. Oops. Make sure I type it in the right one. Double click this, then type in 90. There we go. Okay. That actually went the opposite way. I'm going to go negative 90. And now I'm seeing that side. So here we have this. The printer's cut off here. The next one we have where the printer got cut off and the rest of it. And then this one's going to be another 90 degrees, so negative 180. And we'll view it. That's the back wall. And then this one is going to be a negative 270. So that's that area. Same thing as going positive 90, negative 270. Okay. And then this guy is going to be, oops, double click, 90 degrees up. So we can see the ceiling. And then we'll most likely have to offset this 180 as well, just to get the correct area. And I'll do this. And we'll do negative 90, so we see the floor. And again, we'll do 180 this way. Most likely, if we need to adjust it, we'll adjust it. Okay, so now what this gives us is we've taken our lat long map and we've broken it up into a cube. Now I could have just gone into the other program, exported a bunch of cubes out, done what I need to do, bring them back in, blah, 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 blah. But it's important to see how you do it in Nuke, okay? So, and also you don't have the program, then you can't do this part. But we have Nuke, we can do that. So I have these here. So what I can do is I have now a picture of what this looks like with this arm. And if I look at the other images, I kind of see the arm in this one as well. That can be airbrushed out. Okay, and it's much easier to airbrush this out than it would be to airbrush the other stuff out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write out this image. So I'm just going to go to my right node. I'm going to drop it in there, but I'm going to delete it real quick. I want to put it back together and then make sure it all worked, and then I'll write it back out. Okay. So we've taken our lat long map. We've broken it apart into cubes, and now we're going to put it back together. So I'm going to go and do another spherical transform. Okay, now this one is going to be, I'm taking a cube and making it into a lat long map. And the second I change this to cube, you'll see that I get all of these little manipulators. Okay, so looking at what we're doing inside of here, we essentially have facing the, let's go here, facing this wall, let's say that that's positive, positive z. Okay, so negative z would be the opposite wall. So this would be negative x, and then this would be, oops, that'd be positive x, that would be negative x. And this would be positive y, and that'd be negative y. Okay, so we're essentially, if we look at a cube here, we're shooting this image onto each one of these walls And so we just have to kind of line it up with what they would be. So positive z, positive x, positive y, negative y. Okay. So positive z, we said was this one. Positive x, we said was this one. Negative z, that one. Negative x, that one. Now you'll see that there's no negative and positive y. I have to actually pull these out from here. So negative y would be the last one, and then positive y would be that one. So now if you view this, you'll see that it doesn't quite work out. Okay, and this is just something that as we connect these things, we have to play around with them a little bit. So even though we've kind of connected them in the way that they seem like they should be, it's just not connecting them the way that they actually should be connected. So I'm just going to swap my x here. So I'm just going to take this one and connect it there. Take this one and connect it here. Okay. So now basically I went to positive z, negative x, negative z, positive x. Okay. So I just want you to get used to the fact that sometimes it's not going to work out, the way it seems like it should. Just roll with it, okay? Now if we look at my original image that's up here, this one, and we look at my other image here, we'll see that there is a bit of a difference, okay? In this one, we're lining it up here. The other one, we're lining it up there. Well, it's not really going to matter, because once we get into the 3D app, we're going to rotate it however we want. Okay, so don't worry too much about that. That's really just a matter of, okay, my x's and z's should be swapped here, and then that would correct it. Okay, but I don't really care about that, so I'm just going to leave it. All right, but everything else lines up. Everything else looks like it should look like. There's no like weird funky seams like we were seeing before. All right, so now we can go through, and I'm going to add a right node, and I'm just going to drop it right here. And I'm going to say write this guy out. This is going to go to BG plates, and this is going to be cleanup dot HDR. Cleanup.hdr, and I should put neg y because that way we know which direction it is. Okay, so cleanup.hdr, neg y, render. Okay. Alright, so I'm going to go into Photoshop. And then in Photoshop, I can go through and basically just open up that file and airbrush it out. So I'll go into my folder. Clean up neg y. There it is. So now we just grab the stamp. Look how easy this is going to be to clean it up. Okay. Doesn't matter if we're kind of erasing this highlight on the ground. I don't even care about that really. Airbrush out. And it's only got a highlight being right there, so I'm just airbrushing that out. Clean this up a little bit. Good. Get rid of this piece of tape. Oops. So I have a double line here. There we go. And then just go through and just finish cleaning this area up. Cool. I did give the rug a couple more wrinkles here, but it's not going to really matter. This map that we're using is strictly for reflections, refractions, that kind of thing. So we can get away with, you know, it not being a 100% perfect map. There we go. So now it's gone. Beautiful. I can even take off that piece of tape if I don't like the piece of tape being on the floor there. And I can even clean up some of these other things that maybe are bothering me too. Just about that. Okay. So now I'm just going to save it exactly as it is. Come over to Nuke again and just say read file. What it's going to do is read this file that we just saved. And there it is. Okay. So it doesn't eliminate anything. Everything else is still here. Okay. Our HDR is still an HDR. Now I'm going to do the same thing for this to clean up that area. So if I go in here and just disable, you know, my stuff until I figure out, okay, that's the one that it is. That was a lucky guess. I'll add another write node. Oops. I'm just going to copy this name and paste it here. And we'll call this POSX render. There we go. So now let's open up, clean up POSX. Now I'm just going to copy this data from the one side and see if I can get it on here. Okay, now. You can tell your Photoshop skills are going to really come in handy when you start playing around with this kind of stuff. Especially when you get into the matte painting and all that. There we go. Nice and blended in. Alright. So let's save this or save it just where it is. I have to flatten my layer first, then save. Okay, my HDR is still intact. Okay, everything that we had before. Go back to Nuke, hit read, and now that little area is cleaned up and gone. Okay? Alright, so let's scoot this back down. Just kind of reorganize the Nuke file here. Oops. Come on, Control. All right, let's grab everything. Pull this here, pull this here. Okay. I don't need to see these little postage stamps, so I can just go to Node, hide the postage stamp. Click this one, Node, hide the postage stamp. Okay, and then I can do the same thing, just kind of, you know, reorganize some of these. I can't bring these all in together because that would kind of mess it up. But I can just kind of lay it out nice and neat. There we go. Okay, so now let's look at this lat long map that we have here. And you'll see that up here this says 960 by 540. If you remember from my previous discussion about this, is that this should be basically twice the height. Okay, so 4093 by 2047. I don't know why it rounded to that random number, but This should be twice the height, and it's not. It's actually like stretching it. So I'm going to go into my settings here. I just click and go to S. Change this to 4093 by 2047. And then we're going to get that full resolution image that we should have had initially from the very beginning. Okay, and then if we wanted to test this again, we could always drop a sphere into this and then look at that sphere and see, you know, is this working correctly? And it looks like something happened where it kind of broke. Look at my lat long map again. Okay, so I figured out I made a little boo-boo here. Because we're using a cube, these images that were here, if I change my settings back to 960, you'll see that these are coming out at 960 by 540. Okay, well, they shouldn't even be that. These should be square. Okay, because we're doing a cube. So each one of these pieces should be a piece of that cube, like this. Okay, so what I did was I added a reformat node. Bam, reformat. To each one of these, made sure that the reformat was set to something large. I'm going to do 2048 because that's the height by 2048. Okay, and I'm just going to copy this and delete these other ones I put in, and then paste in each one of these spots. Okay, and the other thing that happened was when I wrote this one out, it wrote it out at 960 by 540. Okay, so I need to make sure that I write it out at the correct resolution. That square resolution, so that when it puts it all together, it all works. So I disable these, and then just to verify, I'll go back to my settings, make sure this is at 4093. Preview this again, and make sure everything's lining up right. And it appears everything is lining up right. I know I have a seam right here. I don't see it, so yes, everything's good. Okay. So what I'm going to do is disable this, rewrite out this file, and Photoshop still has it open, so I have to close Photoshop. Okay, just rename it 2. Do the same thing for this guy, and this one 2. Turn the read off and hit render. Okay, then I'm going to Photoshop, re-airbrush those out, and then come back into Nuke. Alright, so now I've gone through Photoshop, I exported them out, as you saw. I repainted them again. It actually went a lot quicker the second time. And even like this leg that I had to kind of go through and paint in was already there. So I don't know how I did that, but magical, I guess. Alright, so now if we come back, we look at that final lat long map, drop it onto a sphere, and as we spin around, you can see it is perfect. Okay, and so you have to kind of go through these systems of checks and balances to get this to look right. Now here, it's obviously a little bit off, so I could always go through and repaint that if it becomes an issue. I'm most likely thinking it's not going to be an issue, but you can see how definitely there's some blending happening here, but again, we'll take it one step at a time. Okay, this is a fluid process. It's not a, you know, start here, end here, that's it. Okay, we're going to be bouncing around the way a fluid typically does if you shake it up. So I'm going to save this into my nuke environment. There we go. Okay. So now that's the environment that we have here. Then what I have to do is go through and process my background image. So I'm going to come off to the side and read in my background images. Now if you look, here's my background images. They're all labeled like this. I can't see what they are. So I'm going to turn off sequences and then I can see what they are. Okay, I can bring in each one. So let's just lay these out. And I'm going to look at them one at a time. Okay, I'm going to try to go with something more horizontal that is going to work better. And I want something with a little bit of room. So like this guy here could be pretty good. It could put something right there. So I'm really debating between these two. I think this one gives me kind of a neater angle. Okay, 1480. So I'm just going to delete these other ones. I don't really need them. I could do this to multiple ones also. I'm going to use that one. Okay. Let me actually read in one more, this 1479 one here, just to show you something else. All right, so on this, we can't really see it here. You know, you don't really see it right off the by using your eye alone. But what's happening is we are getting a little bit of distortion around these edges. Okay, you can't really see it on this edge, but we are. And so what I want to do is I want to go through and just kind of clean up that distortion. So under the same thing here, we have lens distortion. And there's several ways that we can do lens distortion to correct it. And one of the ways is just simply going in and tweaking the pixels, just going through and just kind of pushing and pulling until we get that distortion to go away. Okay, that's one way. Not most accurate, but that's one way. The other one we can do is image analysis, where we can have it analyze the image itself or analyze the sequence and do that. We can do grid analysis if we had a checkerboard, which we don't. We're going to use this one, which is line analysis. Okay, so essentially what we're going to do is draw a line. So I'm going to say drawing mode on, and I just want to draw where lines should be straight. So I know that like this bar back here, if I click here, I click there, and I click here, and then I right click, that should be a straight line. And you'll see for the most part it is, but it does kind of come up. Like you can see it's a little bit off right there. And right here it's a little bit under. Okay. Oops. Let me turn drawing mode back on. So I'm just going to put one there, there, and there. Right click. Oops. Let me just clear the lines. Oops, I could have just cleared. Whatever. This. I can zoom in too just to get more accuracy. That, right click, there we go. Okay. So there's one line, and draw another one here, there, and there. I know the side of this computer, well, see, even that, the side of the computer, I don't know. It's supposed to be straight. Should be straight anyway, right? You just got to be aware of some things might not be actually straight. And the more lines you have, the more accurate it's going to be, as long as those points that you're setting up are accurate. Like if this bar was bent, someone kicked it, whatever, bent the bar, it's not going to know how to straighten that out. The carpet up until this bump should be straight. And each one of these, you see I need 3 points. There we go. Okay, I'll also add some over here. This piece of paper should be straight. This runner right here should be straight. Alright, so now that we have several lines throughout this, let's say analyze. And the fact that this went above where we were at, so it's at 5,173, whatever, means that it did find some distortion and it did correct it. Okay, so if I disable that, re-enable it, you can see where that distortion is. Okay, now it's actually pushing our image out a little bit. So I may need to come in here with a transform and then just scale this down, oops, so that it fits better in the screen. Okay, so now here it is, undistorting it. Okay, so now what I can do is I can take that distortion, and this other image was taken with the exact same camera. So I can then apply it to that camera that I have here. So if I had several cameras that I wanted to use, I can just do it to one, or several images from the same camera. I can do it to one, and then just apply it to the other one too. Okay, or if I have one that has maybe stronger lines, I could do that on the stronger line one, and then come back in and apply it to the one that I actually want to use. Okay. So now that we have our image here, this 4,984 is good for like a final image. Maybe it's a little bit bigger already or too big, but we're going to resize everything. So let's go to reformat. There we go. And we're going to say that we want to scale this. We'll say 0.8 and fill. Okay, so we shouldn't really see a difference in turning this on and off, except that this number is changing. Okay, we are getting a little bit of filtering adjustments here as I click that back and forth, but nothing too insane. Right. We could also change this to Lanczos. You know, sometimes you get better results with a different one there. Okay, so this is going to be our high res 3942. I could also have just set this to 2 format and then picked a new format and made it something like that. But I want to keep the proportions. I don't want to distort it at all. So that's why I use the scale. That way we're not distorting it. And 3,942 is pretty good. Alright, so we're going to take this and we're going to write this out. And this is going to be our BG plate underscore high res dot TIFF. Okay, we'll render that out. Yes. I will scoot it over. I will write another file out. And I'm going to click the same name and then just call this low res .jpg. Okay. That way we have a low res one to work with. So hit render for that. Hit OK. And there it goes. Okay, so let's save our nuke stuff. And then we can get into the Maya stuff.